Hey, bud. You good?
With my recent release on Black Summer Season 1 being well received, I decided to do a follow-up for Season 2, the season that ironically is set in winter. With the zombie apocalypse having wiped out most of humanity, and the quarantine zones that were promised to keep them safe, most survivors exist as little more than scavengers still trying to come to grips with the vicious, cruel world they are now forced to live in. By winter time, civilization basically doesn't exist anymore, and most survivors have given up hope trying to find outposts for their salvation, instead looking to try and establish their own and ride things out as best they can. This is proven difficult by the fact that everyone else has the same idea, and with most groups having become more ruthless in order to survive the apocalypse, most would rather just eliminate the competition in order to take what little shelter and resources are available.
Listen, we just want our fair share, man.
Yeah? Fuck your fair share. I'm gonna take what I want. You're gonna get the scraps, and then you're gonna fuck off. How does that sound?
There's a lot of production aspects from the first season that is carried over into this one. There's plenty of long takes, whether it be characters talking or action scenes, really allowing you to feel in the moment. There's a lot of good set design and practical locations, whether it be a abandoned ski lodge that so far isn't too bad as it was closed during the summer everything went to shit, an old plantation house that has a variety of nooks and crannies that the protagonists need to defend from invaders, both living and undead, to even just small world building touches, like two survivors using an abandoned, flipped over ambulance as shelter. In fact, if you enjoyed the first season's production design, then this season has exactly the same sort of style to it. The only thing this season doesn't carry over is the tone. If you thought the tone for the previous season was a bit depressing, you're going to struggle to cope with this season, because it's so dark and the characters are so abhorrent that you can probably count the amount of characters to root for just using your thumbs. The first episode heavily establishes the tone of this season. We see groups of survivors running out into the wilderness, torturing, fighting and killing each other for small scraps that a small plane keeps dropping in the nearby area, showing no hesitation in putting down their friends when they get injured and threaten to turn into infected, showing just how desperate most people are in this new world. Another scene shows a man desperately struggling through the snow to escape being attacked by his now zombified colleague, desperate to reach salvation and for someone to save him. As his colleague gets stuck on a fence, rifle fire appears from a nearby house, killing the zombie. As he looks towards the house, thanking them for saving him, he is shot and killed as well, his body left to rot in the snow. Now, as we find out later, the rifle fire coming from this house comes from none other than Rose, one of the main protagonists and leader of the group from Season 1. With the stadium having either fallen or ran out of resources, the group had to leave, with her daughter Anna, son and Spears forced out onto the streets, desperate for safety and struggling with the horde of zombies and bands of psychopaths roaming the urban areas. Despite her willingness to kill and steal in order to survive, Rose had demonstrated in the previous season that she would only do these things if no other options presented themselves, such as stealing from the underground club because they needed weapons to reach the stadium, and killing the armed corrupt troopers to rescue Spears, a man who had rescued her in the first episode and stuck by her side to help get her daughter when he could have just run away. She didn't have a criminal past, she was a devoted wife and mother, and had little combat or survival experience. But now, Rose will do any action as long as she perceives it to be the best way to save her daughter, no matter the cost.
What's wrong?
The rations are gone! Don't look, baby. Don't look.
As we see in this episode, not only has she taken over the house and is currently holding the original group hostage, but she is quick to kill a grateful and worn out survivor purely because she doesn't trust him, doesn't have time to win him over to their side, and there's not enough resources to feed another person, a far cry from how she was a few months ago. On top of this, we also see Spears, lying disorientated in the wilderness, having been abandoned and left to die by Rose after receiving a bullet wound to the gut and slowing the group down. But I think the most tragic scene in the first episode is the very first scene, set sometime after Season 1 finished but before the main events of Season 2. when the snow hasn't arrived and there's still more resources than what's available now. In this opening scene, we see a disheveled and terrified Lance struggling to survive. Now, Lance was one of the main characters of the first season, and while subtle, he had a small character arc. In the first few episodes, he started as very cowardly, constantly refusing to really help others in any sort of combat and running away from danger, to the detriment of everyone else, with Rose being the only person to show him any care and respect. As such, in episode 6, when the two reunite, Lance is quick to try and help her when she is being harassed by one of the club guards, and after joining the group and heading towards the city, he is quick to arm himself and fight to help the group reach the stadium, only fleeing from them due to the hectic and chaotic fighting in the city centre. As he reaches the outside of the stadium, he sees that the doors to the lower floors are sealed shut, and with the infected hot on his tail, he is forced to leave, abandoning the one place of salvation he had fought so hard to reach. The start of season 2 opens with him dirty, tired and exhausted, using a KFC bucket to hold old siphoned gas just to keep his car going. He is then approached by another survivor, who is begging him for help, and despite his paranoid persona, he chooses to let her in, showing a small act of kindness despite the harsh world they currently live in. It turns out that the girl was just a distraction so her boyfriend could approach him and steal the car, except the boyfriend chooses to just straight up execute him, shooting him in the head and leaving him to die of blood loss. One of the main characters of the show, someone we saw fight to survive for an entire season, is killed off in the first 5 minutes, and left to turn into one of the things he had successfully been fighting against for the past few months, all because someone decided to kill him for a resource they could have just taken or even shared. This is the tone of the season, and to sum it up in one word, it's nihilistic.
Good. Dude, I'm good.
And ultimately, I think the tone of this season is what breaks it for some audience members. I am personally fine with this season. I think it looks at the realistic result of an apocalypse scenario, where survivors that used to be good people have devolved to their basic instincts in order to survive, with some small pieces of hope being the only thing keeping them going. On the other hand, realism isn't always what people want to see. Usually when you watch shows that revolve around different people, maybe even several groups of people, you want to see a wide variety of different personalities and goals, not only to keep things interesting, but to give us at least a few characters we can relate and root for. So when you have a show where 99% of characters are just grim, gritty survivors who have no problems killing random strangers and even their own allies for small-term gains, it can be difficult to keep watching.
Just trying to survive.
Overall, I think this season is just as good as the first one. It has a lot of good production value, there's a lot of dynamic fight scenes, a variety of shots and well choreographed camera work, and it really makes you feel the harshness that a bad winter brings, seeing all these people trying to huddle up for warmth and slipping all over the place. But if you saw the first season and thought that the psycho kids in the school was too disturbing, watching the group accidentally slaughter an entire nightclub full of mostly innocent people was too unsympathetic, or thought it was unfair that a lot of survivors died right when they were about to reach the safety of the stadium, then this season probably won't bring you a lot of enjoyment. Thanks for watching, lads and lasses. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing and checking out some of my other videos. Sharing always helps, and if you're feeling really generous, please consider my Patreon or YouTube membership. I also have a Twitter and occasionally I do live streams. But most of all, I just hope you had a great day and hopefully I will see you in the next video.